All right, all right. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to yet another Gridiron Expert Wednesday night live stream coming at you at the usual 8 p.m. Central Time, ready to talk anything and everything college football. So once again, we're so happy to have every single one of you, whether you're on the chat right now or whether you catch the live stream in the middle or after it's already finished. Regardless, you're getting some of the best content and some of the best discussion right here. Not just from me. I'm just the talking head here. We've got some great discussion in the chat. We're going to have some great callers tonight, talking anything and everything college football leading up until week 0, which begins on August 29th. So we're so pumped to have everybody. Scott Van Kale, not sure when he's going to be able to come back, but making sure to tell everybody to hit that like button. Once again, hitting that like button, guys. It helps us out big time with our analytics. So hit that like button. And Scott, good luck, if I'm reading that correctly, good luck unloading bricks, putting in some manual labor. So good luck doing that. The man, the myth, the legend, DM is here, pulling some quick math on us. We're just a little over 110 subscribers away, guys, from reaching 4,000 subs. And that's something that I think we can hit by the end of June. I really do. I think we can get 110 in about 3 weeks or so. And he is correct. We've added about 80 subscribers since last week. So we're really on the upward trend here. We hope it stays that way. Mark TR here as well. 1-800-GO-CANES. That's going to be the call-in number for the night. 1-800-GO-CANES. The king will rule. The Eric King. Hoping to he kind of really just fix everything up in Miami with Manny Diaz. Mark, I'm going to tell you one thing. I think you will probably like my Miami prediction when we get to that point here in a few months. Nothing too spectacular, but much better than what they've been doing over these past few seasons. We got college football obsession here. Great content on YouTube, great content on Instagram as well. So make sure to go drop him a follow. And Keto here as well. We got that new backdrop tonight. First time that we've ever unveiled it on the Gridiron Expert. This was a birthday gift, actually, just from a few weeks ago. I was able to get this sign. It's actually not a poster. It's like it's all made out of wood. So my family found this guy who's great. He does stuff for like Disney World. He does stuff for other businesses and was able to handcraft our logo made by a great friend of mine who also creates all of our thumbnails, and handcrafted this logo that we were able to hang up in the back here. So it's going to be on display tonight. It's going to be on display for all of our prediction videos coming up, which, by the way, if you haven't heard already, our college football predictions, year 4, guys, year 4 of college football predictions. It's really unbelievable. It's been that long. Starts June 25th. We put out a big video yesterday. Kind of emotional. It's kind of emotional to make, but at the same time, got me really, really hyped in the process of making it. And I hope it did the same for you guys. Getting us ready for the season. Predictions starting June 25th. And, of course, that's where the fun begins. That's where the discussion really heats up. And that's when you know that college football is right around the corner. We got Cole Converse on the line here, already dropping some facts for us here. 4 stadiums. One used to be named by Hugh Grant. One is the stadium named after a AA. One used to be Olympic Stadium, and one named for Big Pharma executive. Put them in their place. Oh, he's doing trivia. Look, I'm gonna need a pen and a paper, Cole, to start writing this stuff down. So I will get back to you on all those. And of course, tonight, guys, we are back to a call-in show, but the kicker is we're going to do 5-minute minimum. So this might be a scenario where we have to cut you off a little bit. This might be a scenario where you call and you ask your question or you kind of give us your take on a certain topic, and then we kind of go our separate ways, and I address the rest of it on the stream, because we want to be able to get to as many callers as possible, but we want to get back to the chat as well. We want to try to get that back to as many people in the chat, because last week's was one of the better live streams we've had in a long time. And we'll probably be going for about an hour 15 or so tonight, try to cut it a little shorter than the 2 hours we've been averaging over these past few weeks. So before we get to that, I want to make sure we're all caught up on the chat here. College football obsession, hey, no worries, my man, no worries. Hey, I'm not, look, I totally forgot you even mentioned that last week about the Super Chat donation, so I'm not holding you to it at all. I hate that your phone was taken away. But regardless, I appreciate the support. I appreciate you remembering. That stuff does go a very long way. And being a man of your word, that's something that we don't have much of these days. So that does go a long way for sure. All right. So Scott Van Kale is back. Mike Myrick is here. Go Knowles, as always. Mike, always happy to hear you, whether it's here in the chat, whether it's here on some other videos as well. So super pumped to have you here. And you and Cole have one thing in common. While you're not fans of the same team, you are both going to be fans of Chubba Purdy, who is going to try to win the starting quarterback job at Florida State. Don't think that's going to happen. Probably going to go in favor of James Blackman just because of experience. But Purdy is very, very talented. And I think he's going to be the guy in Mike Norvell's offense maybe next year or the year after that to kind of get Florida State back to that relevancy and contending for ACC titles and maybe at the national stage as well. So we're going to put the call-in number in the stream right now in the chat. Once again, 5-minute minimum or 5-minute maximum. Might have to cut you off a little bit. We want to try to get to as much as possible and what will be a little bit of a shorter live stream, but we still want to get to as much as we can. So there we go. 901-297-4545 is the call-in number for tonight. Cyclone Mitch would call in, but he's going to Omaha. Wow. Hey, no worries, Mitch. Safe travels. If you don't mind me asking, where are you headed? Big vacation, possibly? Head down to Omaha to catch a flight. It is summer vacation, everybody. Despite all this coronavirus junk, you can still don't want to cancel all your vacation plans. Keto, that's a great question. My thoughts on the Heisman contenders next year. I think you have Lawrence up there. I think you've got Justin Fields up there. I think those are your top two, undisputed, at quarterback, because you've got Lawrence and you've got Justin Fields, Clemson, Ohio State. Your third, it's really, really difficult who I would even consider putting in the third. I think you could even go as far as put Chuba Hubbard up there at number 3 if he stays at Oklahoma State. He put out that cryptic tweet a few weeks ago saying, big news coming soon. And Scott does a great job of keeping up with all the news. And so I'll probably need to talk to Scott a little bit more about some of that stuff because I have a hard time keeping up with everybody's tweets and their updates. But if he does in fact stay at Oklahoma State and has a season like he did last year, he's going to get invited to New York for the Heisman ceremony. He kind of got overshadowed, I thought, a little bit by Jonathan Taylor. Everybody was praising him, not saying he didn't deserve it. He was so good. But I think because Oklahoma State was never in contention for a playoff spot like Wisconsin was for about half of the season, Hubbard kind of got, overshadowed. And I think that's not going to be the case this year. This is an Oklahoma State team that can be really, really good. So I like Trevor Lawrence. I like Justin Fields. I like Chuba Hubbard. I like Travis Etienne. It's ridiculous that Clemson has probably the top quarterback in the country and maybe even the best running back in the country as well. So Etienne certainly deserves to be up there. I think those are probably my top 4, Keto, just in my opinion. So Heisman certainly going to be wide open last year. We thought we had it all figured out in 2019. We thought, it's going to go to Tua. Maybe it'll go to Jalen Hurts because the Oklahoma factor. And then Joe Burrow comes out of nowhere and blows everybody out of the water. And that's certainly one thing for me, guys, that I kind of get frustrated with. Just a side note here with the Heisman. I miss the days when the Heisman ceremony came on in late December and you had your top 3 or top 4 players in New York. I miss the days of not knowing who was going to get it. I get sometimes you have a guy that blows everybody out of the water like Joe Burrow and you're like, he's a shoo-in. No one else deserves to win it but Joe Burrow. Sometimes I get it. But in recent years, there have been legitimate cases where you should have had a closer match in the Heisman race, where you should have been on the edge of your seat waiting to find out who's going to win what is arguably the greatest award in college football, individual award at least. And when December rolls around, okay, he's winning the Heisman. No need to tune in. It's not suspenseful. It's not exciting. And you know that out of the 4 players that usually get invited, 3 of them already know they're not going to win. Still an honor, still a great experience. You're getting to meet legends. You're getting a trip out to New York. You're getting to hang out. You're in the spotlight. I wouldn't complain if I was out there, but I do miss the days where it was suspenseful. I do miss the days of not knowing. I do miss the days of not having very tight Heisman Trophy races. But at the same time, that comes down to how well individual players play. Someone's always going to be better than the other. It's just a matter of, are you that much better like Joe Burrow was, or are you just slightly better like, Sam Bradford or Troy Smith or some guys like that? Cyclone Mitch is going to Alaska. Wow. So going to Omaha to catch a flight out to Alaska. Well, Mitch, seriously, have a great time out there. Alaska's up there towards the top of my list of states I want to go to. Everybody kind of dogs on it, saying there's not much to do there, but I've heard it's absolutely beautiful, and certainly one I want to cross off. I want to try to hit all 50 states at some point, and clearly have never made it to Alaska. So we're getting our first caller in from South Carolina, and of course, we'll be back to the chat here in a second, but we definitely want to get to our first caller tonight. All right, who do we have on the line with us?
Hunter 5657.
Hey, what's up, Hunter? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's been very depressing in Clemson football.
Very depressing within Clemson football?
Yeah, but no Clemson football. It's been done. It's just been depressing on the campus.
Yeah, it's been a rough go-around, especially with the loss of Justin Ross as well.
Yeah, that's gonna bring them down a lot. I know.
Yeah, I hated to see that. He was supposed to be kind of their leading wide receiver this year, and now he goes down with injuries. Now it's kind of a next man up mentality. Amari Rodgers is going to have to step up a little bit. Gada's going to have to stand up a little bit, and I think they're going to be just fine, though, Hunter. I think the Tigers are probably almost a shoe-in to make the playoff again.
Well, let me tell you something. I thought Travis EPM was going to lead, definitely.
Yeah, I think everybody did, Hunter. I think everybody thought ETN, with the season that he had last year and was as well as he's played over the past few years, was going to bolt for the NFL. And but I think the deciding factor in that was how bad Clemson played in the national championship. You win a natty in 2018, then lose the next one by 17. I don't think that's the way that he wanted to end his college career. So I think he wanted to try to come back and win one more.
Yeah, but the one thing is that what we need to do before Travis leaves is before the season starts next season, we need to get a running back. On scouting, we need to get a running back. That's because our secondary running back is non-existent, basically. It's basically non-existent.
You're right, because I'm going to be honest with you, Hunter. I haven't done too much research on the depth of Clemson's roster yet, but you don't have a kind of two-headed monster at running back. It's Travis Etienne or bust, so they don't have much depth at that position, which definitely means you got to load up because we know he'll be gone after this year.
I have a couple more questions for you.
What's up?
What do you think about what are your thoughts about our defense now? That's because we lost one of our best we lost one of our best players on the defense.
You lose a lot of key players defensively, Hunter. You do, but the one thing that Brennan Venables has done is he's taken the talent that he has and always has changed the defensive scheme to fit that talent, and that's a sign of a good coach. A lot of coaches are so stuck up in their ways that when they lose some of their best players, they're just like, okay, we'll suffer a rebuilding season, and Venables doesn't do that. Clemson's going to have a very dangerous defensive line this year. Last year it was kind of the opposite. Last year they lost so much up front, but their secondary, their back seven, was pretty good. This year it's going to be the opposite again. This year the defensive line and part of their linebacking core is going to be pretty strong, and the secondary is going to be a little bit weaker than it was last year. So it's going to be up to Venables to kind of decide the type of scheme that he kind of wants to run. But he's bounced around a lot last year, and I think he'll do it again this year. And I think Clemson's in a little bit of a better position defensively than Ohio State, who lost so much, especially in their secondary.
All right, now I just have one more question for you, and I'll get off the line.
Sounds good.
Do you think that LSU can recreate what they did last year?
I do not, Hunter. I don't believe that they can. You know, you talk about defense with Clemson. You talk about how much they lost. I mentioned how much Ohio State lost. LSU lost so much, not just offensively, as we all know, but defensively as well. I think they had 13 players drafted in the draft. That doesn't even include guys that weren't drafted and then were later picked up by free agents or free agency. So you look at LSU, their whole success is going to depend on how well Miles Brennan fills in at the quarterback position. I don't see any way they go undefeated again. The schedule's too tough. Texas at home, got to go to Auburn, got to go to Florida. You get to host Alabama, but still, LSU will not go undefeated, and therefore is going to have a tough test of getting back to the college football playoff. Still, will be a good year under Orgeron, but they're not going to be able to replicate that historic year from 2019.
All right, speaking of which, about Alabama, what do you think about their quarterback situation?
Well, you look at Mac Jones replacing Tua Tagovailoa, and I feel a lot better about Mac Jones right now because he had experience when Tua went down last year. I think if this had been the Tua show up until the Citrus Bowl over Michigan, I'd be a little more concerned. But we saw a lot of Mac Jones action in 2019, and it was in quality games. It was in the game against Michigan. It was in a game against Auburn. It was a little bit against Mississippi State. So you saw him play against SEC opponents, against a great Big Ten opponent, and to me, he played relatively well. So with that type of experience and a pretty decent receiving core coming back, I think Alabama offensively is going to be just fine.
All right, those are all the questions I have for you today, and I'll call you on the next college show.
All right, Hunter, I appreciate it. You take care, man.
You do.
All right. That was Hunter5657, once again, as many could recall, the first ever caller here at the Gridiron Expert. It always has some great questions. One thing I like about Hunter is not only is he prepared with his questions, but he's got a lot of confidence as well. A lot of confidence, and I love it. So, Hunter, once again, thank you for calling. Take care tonight. Hope all is still going well with you. College football obsession here as we head back to the chat. Can't call in tonight, but he does have a simple question. Who has the 3 best group of 5 uniform arsenals in the country? Wow. Whew, group of 5. That's a lot of teams, my man. That's a lot of teams. You break it down. I look at Army and Navy, those kind of schools. While they aren't as flashy, if you've seen some of their helmet combinations and their uniform combinations, they're really, really slick. I really like some of what the military academies, so Army, Air Force, and Navy, I like some of what their uniform combinations are, switching it up almost all the time. There's something to be said for tradition, sure, but seeing, Navy having aircraft carriers and stuff on their helmets, it's pretty surreal. So I like those. You look as well in the group of 5. I certainly like Memphis. I like how Memphis kind of went back to like those tiger stripes. They've kind of got some tiger stripes, I think, on the shoulders of their jerseys as well as on their helmets as well. So I think that's pretty cool. Reminds me a little bit of the Bengals, obviously, which, look, if you're going to be a Tigers team, with the exception of maybe LSU and Auburn, who are so stuck in their traditions, which is great, I think you have to show a little bit of your Tiger pride in that sense. So certainly like Memphis's combinations there. I certainly like the military academy's combinations. But at the end of the day, no one has a better uniform arsenal than Oregon. Oregon was kind of criticized but also praised for the wacky uniform combinations they had. But it's a recruiting tactic. When you've got a partner, I believe it was in Nike. When you've got a partner in Nike that's throwing money at you and saying, please use our uniform combinations. Not only does it look cool on TV, but it kind of gets players to come there as well. Because unfortunately, and this is just me, unfortunately, tradition doesn't mean as much anymore than the flashiness. Recruits want flashy. They want the super nice facilities, which you have to compete in any conference. They want the option to wear super cool uniforms and super different uniforms. They want that flashiness, that newness. And unfortunately, I don't think that's everything. I think if you're choosing a school based on that, I think you're going for the wrong reason, if you're asking me personally. I think you look – sure, there are traditional schools like Alabama who will probably never change their jerseys and their helmets. You got the crimson jersey, you got your white pants, and you've got your crimson helmet with your number on the side. That's it. And I think that's fantastic that they haven't strayed from that. And I hope they don't. And I hope teams like Texas don't really stray too much from what they usually wear. But teams now are trying to find new ways and new recruiting tactics. And unfortunately, the way to get to players now is through recruiting or through uniform combinations and stuff like that. So no one has a better arsenal than Oregon. But if I had to choose, I would prefer tradition any day over than having a wardrobe full of uniforms. It's like a teenage girl out there, guys. What am I going to wear today? What am I going to wear this Saturday? Why not just have the same thing over and over and over again for a sense of tradition? Makes it a lot easier. Jeff Wilson, good to have you here tonight. Hope you're all doing well. And, of course, thank you for all the comments on the videos. Usually one of the first people to like and comment on a video when we post. So, Jeff, hope you're doing well. Super happy to have you. Scott Van Kale keeping us updated on the Chuba Hubbard situation. No late news as of yet. And that's what I thought. I thought there hadn't been any new news lately, but certainly something we need to continue to monitor. Can't imagine it's anything of him leaving Oklahoma State unless he knows something that we don't in the sense of this upcoming college football season. I could see him maybe bailing early if he knew that this season wasn't going to be a full season, if we weren't going to have a season, something like that. But again, I certainly don't think that's going to be the case. DM coming in, Trey Lance's backup is a former Iowa State quarterback with Big 10 starting experience, or excuse me, Big 12. I saw your correction, and even I messed it up. Big 12 starting experience, and it was. And DM, I am blanking on that name right now. You and I literally just talked about this. I'm going to Google it right now because I'm totally blanking on the name unless you listed it down here earlier. But he did play at Iowa State, and that's something that's going to benefit Trey Lance down the road because he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. At least he was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And if he were to go down with an injury, then at least they've got someone that has solid playing experience at the FBS level in a Power 5 conference. That's something that will certainly go a long way. And we just got a super chat donation, so I'm going to pull back up to the chat here in a second. But Lamar Stevens, first off, who's been blowing my mind with some of the comments he's been putting on our videos. Lamar, thank you for the discussion there. And Lamar, thank you so much for the super chat donation. Once again, you don't know how much that means and how far that goes for us. So thank you so much. And answering your question here, which team in the Power 5 brings back the most interceptions with their returning 2020 defense? And he's saying LSU with 13. So I don't know if that was a question that I missed earlier or if he was just answering. But Power 5 brings back the most interceptions with their returning 2020 defense. I believe he's answering his own question. That is LSU with 13. So even though LSU loses so much across the board offensively and defensively, keep in mind they're going to have one of the best cornerbacks in America in Derek Stingley. And that's something that we really need to watch out for. So you lose Joe Burrow. You lose a couple other guys like that. But you still got Derek Stingley, who CeeDee Lamb said was the best cornerback he ever faced. And that was just as a true freshman. We're getting a call from New York. So let's go ahead and take this one. I'll get him on the line here. All right. Who do we have on the line with us?
It's Comic Dude. How are you?
Hey, Comic Dude. How you doing, man?
I'm good.
All right. Well, hey, it's good to see you. I know it's certainly been a while, and I hope everything's been going well with you.
It's been well, especially up here.
Up here in the Northeast, right? You're up in, New York, right? New York, Jersey, around there?
Yeah.
Awesome. So what you got on your mind today? What are we going to be talking about? Rutgers, I presume?
Well, more or less the uniform topic you guys brought up. I'd like to throw my hat in the ring. Like, I like tradition above all else. And since you brought up Rutgers, I might as well talk about that. I was not a fan of the white helmets that they brought in 2018. Terrible decision.
I agree. Look, I mean, Rutgers is a team that I always associate with just you got your classic red helmet with your white R, and then your red or scarlet jersey. I think that's classic tradition and classic Rutgers.
Yeah, and also the white pants and sometimes red, but enough about that.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there. That's something that even a team that of course I'm a fan of in Arkansas, they kind of whipped that out. Their first game of the season in 2018 was a home game, and they wore all white, and I was strongly disappointed in that. I hated it, and I thought it was just kind of ridiculous. But again, it's a recruiting tactic and something to kind of bring some sort of flashiness to the program, which for Rutgers and Arkansas, as we both know firsthand, hasn't worked out quite well.
Yeah, speaking of the all-white look, I hate it. It's ugly. It's like, why? You love school colors.
Well, I have nothing against necessarily wearing all white on a road game. I don't think most people should at least wear their colored helmet or maybe colored pants. But, if you're at home, we're not playing basketball here. It's a little bit different if you're playing basketball. Basketball, you wear white. That's tradition. But if you're a home team, you need to be wearing your school colors, like you mentioned. They're there for a reason.
Speaking of which, I think it should be universal. Like home team wears the colored jerseys and road teams wear the white jerseys. I know there's tradition with baseball, but really, no.
Yeah, no,
Also, Overwatch has a video league, and their home team wears colors, and their road team wears white.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of funny how you've got an esports team wearing school colors, where sometimes your football program, which in theory should drive in more revenue and means a little bit more, does not.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%. So you're more of a stickler for tradition than anything else, kind of like I am.
I mean, it's okay to bring out an alternate jersey. I don't mind blackouts. Those are cool. But other than that, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there's something to be said for that too. Sometimes you look at that Rutgers. I think they've done blackouts before. You look at Georgia. One time they've done the annual blackout game. So every now and then you get a tradition or something kind of historical like that. Bring it back every now and then, but don't make it a habit. I think for most teams, it's I sometimes don't have an issue with it if you do something just once. Maybe you're at a neutral site or maybe it's a season opening game. Hey, let's wear some cool jerseys, but don't make a habit of it where you're going to be wearing it or switching it up every week. I'm kind of a creature of habit and would like my team to stay fairly consistent.
Yeah, I gotcha. One thing, throwback uniforms are also good. I like those. Throwback uniforms are not bad. If you're gonna do that, do it once in a while too. But just throw shit out there. Oh, sorry, pardon my French.
No, I agree. Throwbacks are pretty neat too. A couple of teams have been able to do that. Certain teams can pull them off. Certain teams can't. Depends on how good or bad their throwbacks really were. But it does, for some people, kind of give a sense of a better time. If you go back even as early as the 1980s, which I know was 40 years ago, but still compared to the 60s or something, you can get some throwback uniforms, and those are still really neat. I like those actually sometimes more in the NFL than I do college.
All right.
Well, hey, Comic Dude, I appreciate you calling in, man. Thanks for throwing your hat in the ring, like you said, and it's the ongoing debate, tradition versus flashiness, and unfortunately, I don't think it'll ever end.
All right. Here's to an actual season with fans.
Hey, amen to that. Here's to that. I think it's going to happen.
I think so, too. Take care.
All right, man. Thank you. That's Comic Dude 45, big Rutgers football fan, plays in the band up there for the Scarlet Knights, and it's been a while since we've been able to hear from him. So he is CD 25, I believe, down, or CD 45 down in the chat. 25 it is. And super happy to have him back, not just on the call-in line, but also in the chat as well. So, Comic Dude, thank you so much for calling back in, and super pumped to hear that everything's going well. So I'm hitting the chat again, guys. I want to jump back in. Not going to miss as many as we have in the past. Jeff Wilson, is Air Force a Mountain West championship contender? Absolutely. And I can't spill the beans too much, but Air Force has a couple big-time games on their schedule, and we have them, like one of them, of course, Boise State. One of them is a road game at Purdue, which I know is not necessarily huge in terms of like rank versus rank, but Purdue should be fully healthy and better in 2019. And we had the Falcons winning a couple of those big-time games. And of course, you'll have to wait and find out when predictions start. But look, if they beat Boise State, I think they make the Mountain West Championship game. That will more than likely be decided when they play Boise State early in the season. So huge, huge year for Air Force, 11-2 last year. So yeah, they're definitely championship contenders, especially with Donald Hammond returning at quarterback. Keto, absolutely. Super happy to answer your question regarding the Heisman contenders for this year. And Spencer Rattler is the Oklahoma quarterback that will be taking over. People are saying he's a contender, Keto, because Lincoln Riley has produced a Heisman winner or a contender every single year he's been coached. You got Baker Mayfield, you've got Kyler Murray, and last year was Jalen Hurts. So if history is any indication, Spencer Rattler is going to have a huge year in 2020, which will mean he will throw his name up there as a Heisman contender. So that's why I think a lot of people are telling you that. And we've got George here. If George is still on the line, it's been 20 minutes since he commented. But George, I love this channel. If he had more hours in the day, I'd be here all the time. I see George's comments on just about every other sports page out there on YouTube. And once upon a time, he was fairly consistent here at the Gridiron Expert. So, George, we're super happy to have you back. We're happy to have you whenever you're able to make it. We appreciate your support and your comments. So if you're still here, George, happy to have you. Pumped to have you. Big-time Florida fan. I always love getting his very unique takes on certain topics and certain games. So super glad to see him back. I'm scrolling down through the chat here. I want to make sure we're touching on the big stuff. Jeff Wilson, so another question here. Could Minnesota make the Big Ten championship games? Could Minnesota make the Big Ten championship game? Absolutely. The Big Ten West will probably be decided when the two teams, Wisconsin and Minnesota, face off in Madison. I believe that's on October 10th, I believe. October 10th or October 17th. When they face off in Madison, that game will more than likely determine who wins the West. Unless, of course, Iowa jumps in there. Iowa has to travel to Minnesota, but I believe hosts Wisconsin. So you could find yourself in a bit of a three-way tie at the top of the West standings, depending on how all three of those teams do. But I really think it's more of a two-team race than a three-team race between Wisconsin and Minnesota. Last year, it came down to the final game in Minneapolis, and that was in favor of Wisconsin, winning that game by 21. And I think now it's in Madison, and even though it's going to be middle of October, that game will probably determine who wins that division. So, yes, Minnesota is a contender for the Big Ten championship game, but their hopes might be dashed if they lose to Wisconsin. Keto back at it, wondering what team conference you're doing for your first prediction on the 25th, or is it a surprise? Keto, I hate to tell you, man, I got to keep it a surprise. I want to keep you on your toes. You know, we do game-by-game predictions for every Power 5 conference plus the independents. We do game-by-game for the independents. I know not everybody's super interested in hearing what I have to say about UMass, UConn, and New Mexico State, but regardless, we're going to touch on them. They are independent, so we will discuss them. But got to keep you on your toes. I want you guys to be surprised when we post that first video on the 25th of June. So I believe 2 weeks from tomorrow is when we're starting. And you know, whatever team we start with, and regardless of which Power 5 conference it is, we'll go through that entire conference before we get another. I know some people like to bounce around. They do, you know, a Big Ten team, the next day is SEC, then Pac-12. We're going to stick conference all the way through and slowly move our way through. And this predictions, I've already kind of planned out, guys. I've already got the calendar laid out, which videos are going to be posted when. And if we stick to that, we'll wrap up predictions probably about the second or third week of August, which means we'll only have about a week and a half until week 0 begins on August 29th. So there won't be much of a break between the time we start predictions and then the start of the football season. Fingers crossed it actually happens. And I really do believe it will. So getting back here into the chat here, college football obsession, Hunter has got some balls. Yes, he does. And Hunter responding with a quick thank you. I love it. I love it. Hunter, a great caller here. Hunter, we do appreciate it when you're able to call in. And Mike Myrick in agreement with me here with Florida State, talking about tradition within that program. Florida State, he's right, is another team that really doesn't alter their uniforms any, hasn't altered their traditions. And I love that, especially if I were a lifelong fan of a certain team. If I had been a fan of a certain team for, 30 plus years or whatever, and I've gone to multiple games, I've watched my team on TV, I've seen them through the good, I've seen them through the bad. It's kind of unique to say, I'm going to go to this stadium, regardless of what school you are, and knowing that they're still going to be doing the same chants. The teams are going to be wearing the same uniform, and that you don't walk through the tunnel, and when you find your seat, you look down, and you can't even recognize your team because they're wearing something ridiculous and something that's not true to your school and your program. So Florida State's one of those schools that doesn't change. Alabama is one of those schools. Penn State does a great job of sticking to their tradition. Texas does a pretty good job of sticking to theirs. I'd say Michigan, for the most part, does a pretty good job of sticking to theirs. There's just something to be said. There's something to be said for nostalgia. There's something to be said for tradition. There's something to be said for pride. Not saying that all these schools don't have pride in their program, but, where are your values? What are you putting value in? Are you putting it more in uniforms? Are you putting it more in what you're giving your players? Are you putting it more in how you look? Because let me be honest with you. I don't care how I look if I win. Plain and simple. I don't care how I look if I win. I would be more than happy for my team, or if I was a coach, to go out there and we're going to play in our practice jerseys. But if we win and we go 12-0, I will take it. I'm not going to complain one bit. People might be like, oh my gosh, they look horrible. Who cares? We just went 12-0 and won a natty. Really think I care what we're wearing? And I think that's what really at the end of the day comes down to the difference between flashiness and tradition. And there's also something to be said, again, I could go on about this. There's something to be said, again, for a school like Florida State, for a school like Alabama or Penn State. When you put on a jersey that says, Alabama or Crimson Tide, or you put on a helmet that has that white number on the side, or when you put on a Penn State jersey that, to my knowledge, doesn't have names on the back. Notre Dame is another great example of a team that doesn't really stray from tradition. When you put on that jersey that has your name across the chest or your logo on the side, you're representing not only that program, but you're representing years and years and years of athletes that have come through that program, fans that have supported that program, and that goes a long, long ways. That doesn't matter. I think that doesn't matter regardless of where you go. It doesn't matter what jersey you're putting on, but I think there's a little something more to that if you're putting on a jersey or a helmet or a uniform that hasn't changed for years on end. So again, my spiel on traditions and this kind of the recruiting tactics that we have with that uniform changes, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I know a lot of people are. So as we continue to go down here, once again, Lamar Stevens, thank you so much for the super chat donation. I really do appreciate that, and fantastic stat that he's returning here with LSU. And before we got that call from Comic Dude, we were saying again that Derek Stingley is going to be one of the best cornerbacks in America, and CeeDee Lamb, who is one of the best wide receivers in America, said that Stingley was the best cornerback he faced in his career. That was, of course, in the college football playoff, in the Peach Bowl, which LSU annihilated Oklahoma in. But for CeeDee Lamb to say that with a true freshman cornerback, that's extremely, extremely impressive. And we've got Lamar Stevens again contributing to the super chat. So I just thank him for doing one earlier, about 20 minutes ago, and now he's done it again. So Lamar, thank you so much again. I appreciate it. Seriously, wow. How many underclassmen will likely start for LSU? And he's saying 4 players. So he's just pumping us with some LSU knowledge here. That's what Lamar is hooking us up with. 4 underclassmen will likely start for LSU, 2 at cornerback, 1 at tight end, 1 at left guard. And so I think Lamar also trying to make a point here as well. You look at LSU, and we talk about how much they lost, but when you've got 22 players going out on the field, 11 on offense and 11 on defense, and you're only going to have 4 players that are going to be underclassmen likely starting for them, it's not too bad. And keep in mind that the average underclassman at LSU is not that bad compared to an underclassman at another school. LSU is doing a great job of recruiting, and Orgeron does a great job of breeding talent. So I think there's something to be said for that too. A freshman or a sophomore at LSU is not the same as a freshman or a sophomore at Akron. Had to throw that Akron pun and that Akron jab in there. So once again, Lamar, thank you very much for that. Thank you for the LSU knowledge. Because let me tell you one thing. When we get to our LSU prediction here pretty soon, not only will I be doing some research on my own, but I might have to come revisit this live stream and take up some of the knowledge that you're dropping on us right now. So I appreciate that. Cole Converse, I like that matchup right there. Florida State versus Iowa State in the 2021 Sugar Bowl. Chubba versus Brock, the Purdy matchup. That'd be pretty awesome. You get 2 brothers going at it at quarterback for the Seminoles and the Cyclones in a New Year's Six bowl game. That'd be fantastic. And I think 2021 Sugar Bowl, if you're talking this upcoming 21, then yes, it would be a New Year's Six. And I think if you're talking next season, then it would be I think a college football playoff matchup, if I'm not mistaken. I think Sugar Bowl will be a playoff matchup in 2021. But yeah, the Purdy matchup would be awesome. Very similar to the Harbaugh Bowl that we had not too long ago between Jim and John Harbaugh in the Super Bowl with the Ravens and the 49ers. College football obsession. Yeah, I didn't say Tulane in the mix. Tulane had some. I like their baby blue jerseys they wore last year. I think they were playing Houston. I think it was. They were wearing like the kind of had a little bit of a baby blue, a little bit, few stripes of green. I really did like that. Really, Fritz is doing a really good job there. But Tulane's unfortunately a team that I kind of overlook sometimes. That's my bad. That's my bad. They're slow. They're actually starting to get to relevancy in the American Athletic after so many years of poor football play that I tend to overlook them. And we got another super chat donation here from XO Mount Hood. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that super chat donation. You and Lamar, man, I appreciate it. Both of y'all, really. So thank you so much. Texas at LSU. Texas coming out party or LSU reaffirmation? Whew, that is. I don't know how to address this without giving too much away. But if I'm going with my gut here, because of course predictions haven't come out yet, which means nothing I say here is official. I think this is LSU's reaffirmation, Mr. Hood, Mr. Mount Hood. I think you look at this game. While Texas would certainly be hungry to come on the road and kind of get revenge on LSU because the Tigers came on the road and won in Austin last year. I just don't think that Texas can come into a Saturday night matchup in Death Valley and beat LSU and get a win over the Tigers. Once again, the key to all that is going to be quarterback play of Miles Brennan. How well does he play? If he struggles, because keep in mind, this is a week 2 game. And so they don't have the liberty of going a couple of weeks, working out some kinks, and then getting to play a big-time matchup. This is week 2. But he does have Jamar Chase lining up at wide receiver with him, which was the best wide receiver in football last year, some would say. They do have Derek Stingley lining up defensively for them. And this is an LSU team that I expect right now to win no less than 9 wins. So I think 9 wins are better for LSU yet again. And if they beat Alabama in Death Valley, they could very well make the playoff again. So right now I'm leaning towards LSU in a very close game. Sam Ehlinger and that Texas offense are really going to test that defense that lost so much. Ehlinger is probably not going to be throwing Derek Stingley's way. But once again, it's a matter of how well does Miles Brennan move the ball, and is Texas's defense not only ready for that offense, but is Texas defense ready for that environment? I really can't think of the last time Texas had to face an environment like that. They play Oklahoma every year in Dallas. They don't have to go in to Oklahoma in a hostile environment. They've played in some bowl matchups, neutral site yet again. Sure, TCU's kind of tough, Iowa State's kind of tough, Baylor's kind of tough, but none of those match up to a night game in Baton Rouge. So this is going to be one of the toughest environments that Texas and Tom Herman have faced, and I just don't know if they're quite ready to get over that hump and to accept that challenge. So excellent question. And once again, thank you so much for that super chat contribution. Those do go a long way, so I really do appreciate that. So scrolling back up, I didn't want to miss too much. Scrolling through some here. McD Sports 4 is back, and he, I believe, is kicking off his predictions. I believe he started those last week. So McD, keep up the great work over on your page, sir. Super happy to have you here with us tonight. And the same goes for Nathan Bryant, John Hopkins, and Creative Yet Crazy. All of you guys, super happy to have you back with us tonight. Dropping some great knowledge, dropping some great content right here in the live stream chat. And Keto, thank you so much. 700,000 total views. So not only is our goal to get to 4,000 subs by the end of June, which I think is very feasible, but I really hope to hit 1 million total views by the end of the year. Not the end of June. That certainly is not feasible. We're not getting 50,000 views on a video here. We've actually never done that. But I do think we can get 300,000 views in the next 6 months. It sounds ridiculous, but prediction season's coming up. We've got all college football season. So maybe by the end of college football season, let's extend the deadline. First, second week of January, when the national championship concludes, the goal is to have not only, by that point, hopefully 5,000 subs, but hopefully a cumulative total of 1 million views. That would be insane. Absolutely insane. But I do think that it's a goal that we can accomplish over these next few months. But Keto, thank you for that. John Hopkins bringing back the CATS, Cats, Kentucky intro. How will Arizona be this year? Well, Arizona's got a lot of work cut out for them. I'll tell you this, John, plain and simple, just short story. If Arizona wants to get to a bowl game, they have to take advantage of the first part of their schedule. They have to take advantage of a very early part of their schedule that I think is weak enough. They can start 3-0, 4-0, somewhere around there. And then they're going to have to win a couple upsets in the conference matchups. Kevin Sumlin has to get the Wildcats to a bowl game. Plain and simple. Arizona has to get to a bowl game. If not, Kevin Sumlin might be gone, which means he might have to take a step down and go back to being offensive coordinator. Because he was great at Houston, was decent at A&M, but not good enough by their standards, has struggled at Arizona. Where else are you going to go? You can't win in the SEC. You're not winning in the Pac-12. Maybe he could win in the ACC. A lot of people can do that, but I just don't know. So Arizona's going to be maybe borderline bowl eligible this year, John, but it's a very big year for Kevin Sumlin. Nathan Bryant, how do I like Kansas State's white helmets? I think they're all right. I'm not a huge fan of white helmets for many teams, especially if they're wearing their school color as their jersey. I remember one year I was watching a game. It was Texas A&M and somebody, and they came out in their maroon jersey, but with a white helmet. And I just wasn't too much of a fan of that, especially when the other team's wearing white. That's the other thing, is you know what your opponent's wearing most of the time. So don't try to mimic them. Try to stand out a little bit from your opponent. You know, if the opponent's wearing all white, try to wear as much of your school color as possible. The point of having jerseys, guys, is to distinguish yourself from the other team. So you know who you're throwing to, so you know who to tackle, especially when people are moving very quickly. And when people do that, I'm just not a huge fan of it. So Kansas State's white helmets are okay. Some teams can pull that off. Some teams can make that look good. Some teams can make those white helmets and those wacky uniform combos look all right, but not too many. Creative Yet Crazy making a good announcement here. Penn State is making the call on Monday, deciding if we are going back to class. Football teams are returning. Yes, a lot of football teams are returning to campus for involuntary workouts. Or voluntary workouts, excuse me, trying to get prepared for this upcoming season. A lot of players, unfortunately, across the country are testing positive for coronavirus. A lot of players especially in the South, Alabama had a few tested, Arkansas State where I-10 had a few tested. Arkansas, I believe Texas A&M and Auburn all had players test positive for corona. And you can't help but wonder, while many of these players are asymptomatic, they're not showing symptoms, they're not feeling bad, they're fine. You can't help but wonder that these are just a handful of schools. We've got 130 FBS college football teams we have to worry about. So you do wonder how that's going to play a role. And you also wonder, okay, I'm asymptomatic. I feel fine. I'm not sick. But of course, you do run the risk of getting someone else sick who may not be asymptomatic. And it's just this big ordeal to the point where if someone is feeling fine, but yet is still positive for the coronavirus, do you still let them play football? Do you still let them show up to practice? Do you still let them play in a game? Because the fact of the matter is, this is a problem that's going to continue into the fall. And I can't imagine someone saying, oh, Trevor Lawrence, you have coronavirus? You tested positive? Oh, but you're asymptomatic? Well, too bad. You're going to have to sit out for maybe one of the biggest games of the year. No one's going to do that. That's ridiculous. You know, you can't do that. So you wonder how all that's going to play out. Emperor of Rome, nice to see you, my man. Super pumped to have you with us. And Ryan Mell and the Dank Chronicles. Both of you, super glad to have you, along with Two Quick Basketball. So we got a lot of familiar faces in the chat tonight, and I'm super pumped to have all of you here with us. Hope you guys are all doing well as well. And Dank Chronicles back after 4 weeks. Man, has it been that long? It hasn't. Surely it hasn't been 4 weeks. I thought it was just a few weeks ago that we were talking, but maybe not. Maybe not. Hope you're doing well regardless. Scott Van Kale dropping some knowledge here. The last non-Power 5 team to win the NCAA title is BYU in 1984. Ironically, Baylor played BYU that year and lost. Baylor beat BYU when Steve Young was quarterback in 1983. So BYU, the last non-Power 5 team to win the national title back in 1984. Emperor of Rome, watch out. You've got some competition when it comes to dropping some knowledge and some facts on us. But Scott, very, very interesting. I appreciate that. Two Quick Basketball, nice to see you. Big Cyclone fan, as many may recall. And DM, that is exactly right. I'm sorry I'm just getting to this now as I'm scrolling through the chat, but I blanked. Zeb Nolan, of course. Zeb Nolan is the backup for Trey Lance at North Dakota State. And DM and I discussed this before. That's huge for the Bison. When you really, really think about it, because once again, we said Lance, great dual threat quarterback, didn't throw a single interception last year, led North Dakota State to another FCS national championship. But say he goes down with an injury. Who do you have? Well, you've got a guy that played at Iowa State and, as DM is mentioning here, passed for 369 yards and 2 touchdowns against Oklahoma in 2018. And in 2018, completed 70% of his passes, 70 for 100, for 722 yards in his games played. So not insane stats, but if you remember 2018, Iowa State, did go through multiple quarterbacks, Zeb Nolan being one of them. And so that's a fantastic backup to have on North Dakota State. I'm sure he was hoping to win that starting job, but when you've got a guy like Trey Lance, it's a very difficult thing to do. So, but regardless, they have some depth there at QB to the point where if Lance were to go down, don't worry about it. It's all good. I think Nolan has the talent and the ability to lead them to another deep playoff run, and for all we know, another national championship. We got Emperor of Rome saying, back to the uniform discussion, would love to see a team with pink on their uniforms. I believe Oregon did that. Oregon did some pink on the uniforms back in 2013, 2014. I think they were wearing a pink helmet or they had some pink in their jersey somewhere. Of course, with October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, that goes a long way. So that's a lot of NFL teams tend to do that. You see players wearing pink wristbands or pink on their cleats, pink gloves, pink mouth guards, whatever it is, something just to show their support and to continue to raise awareness for breast cancer. And I think Oregon did it for that reason. Not consistently, obviously. So I think it would be cool to see a little slight pink in some aspects, but not all the time. As College Football Obsession made it quickly to say, Pink's way too feminine. Not saying girls can't play. Had a girl start on my team, was really good, but this is a man's sport. So his words, not mine. But, in a way, he is not entirely false. Although I will say here in Little Rock, there was a very good girl kicker, played for North Little Rock High School. One of the best kickers in the state. And North Little Rock plays in the highest classification of high school football here in Arkansas. And she was pretty dang good. Was their place kicker and was their kickoff. So across the board. And she was very, very, very good. And you see that a lot. I believe she played soccer too. And you see that a lot in soccer players that sometimes make the move from soccer to football to become a kicker or to become a punter. And usually they do very well. And she certainly did. So while you don't see many girls that are able to go out there in any capacity to play a position where they're getting hit constantly, there are still certainly ways and stories where women have gotten into the game of football and have succeeded and have done well for themselves. Of course, not at the college level, not at the NFL level, but still getting associated and getting involved with a sport that is primarily a man's sport. Scott Van Kale, if Nebraska wants to make a bowl game, this is the year because Nebraska's schedule is more favorable this year than the next. And as XO Mount Hood says, if Nebraska fails to make a bowl game this year, Frost's position is going to get chilly. Chilly or piping hot, one of the two. Chilly or toasty, because his seat's certainly going to get very, very hot if they don't get to a bowl game. And Scott, you're right. If he doesn't get there this year, I've been looking at their schedule past few days. If he doesn't get there this year, I haven't looked at next year's schedule, but if they don't do it this year, they don't do it next year, he's out. And you hate to say that because Nebraska, you should have some talent there. You would think they would be able to be decent. You want them to be decent. But it's just not looking good. He's 9-15 in 2 years with the Cornhuskers, guys. He's 9-15 in 2 years at Nebraska. All he has to do this year to give himself a little breathing room is just go 6-6. Be great if he could go better than that. Be great if he goes 6-6 and wins the bowl game. All he has to do is just get to the postseason, and Nebraska fans can finally sit back and say, okay, this isn't great. This isn't Big Ten championship football. This isn't playoff football, but we're heading in the right direction. Maybe Frost is still a good choice. I know a lot of people are doubting him going into 2020. It's taken me a long time to really resonate with me. So, big year for Scott Frost to continue to show that he is the man. So going this way as well. TX427 LFC. I'm sure that's an abbreviation for something. I know things may change in the next few months, but do I think home field advantage will play a big factor if stadiums only allow, say, 50% capacity? That's a fantastic question. That's one that I want to address, and one that I don't have to worry about with you guys because you guys listen, you guys pay attention to the videos, and you catch a lot of stuff that we say. But outsiders won't hear me say. Home field advantage plays a big role in how we predict games. We don't predict every home team to win all the time. We don't predict. It's at home, we're going to give an automatic win. That's not how it works. But it does play a major role. It's called an advantage for a reason. And I believe there are some teams in 2020 that will strongly benefit from having 50% capacity, and some where it won't play a role at all. And I give you an example of that. It's like Ohio State. They're not going to benefit from only having 50% capacity in their stadium. But they're strongly going to benefit from maybe Oregon and Penn State, which would have been their whiteout game, having 50% capacity in theirs. Going into a Beaver Stadium that's usually sold out, whiteout, loud, crazy, and only having 50% there makes that game a lot more manageable for Ohio State because a lot of people are picking Penn State as the trendy upset. They beat Ohio State, maybe they win the East, maybe they get into the playoff. We're not announcing that pick yet. That'll come later. But I do think that's going to play a big factor for some elite teams. those elite teams that have those few trap games on the road, that maybe you want to lean towards that road team, that home team they're visiting to win. But with 100% capacity, you'd pick them. But 50%, I'm not so sure. So I think for some teams, it does play a very big factor. And at the end of the day, I think any fans are better than none. I'd rather have 50% fans going as crazy as they can, being as loud as they can, than having none at all. I think that's for everybody. I think you would much rather take 50% than having nobody. So I'm hopefully it'll be more than that. Hopefully it will be full capacity. But with the rate things are going across the country now, cases continue to rise. There's still a slight concern, not as big as it was months ago, but still, I think you're not going to get a full capacity across the boards. But anything is better than nothing. But I think for certain teams, it will play a role in terms of benefiting them, and some maybe not so much. And I know it's kind of a political answer, but that's kind of my take on it. I think Ohio State's one of those teams that will strongly benefit, be one of the few teams in the country that really benefits from my 50% capacity rule, if that's the route they decide to go. Kicking nerd, do I think Chad Morris didn't have enough time to rebuild at Arkansas and they made a bad move, or do you think he's just that bad? I think Chad Morris is just that bad, kicking nerd. I think he's just that bad. I think you look at the Chad Morris era, those players quit on him. And that's a sign of a bad coach to me. You can tell. Look, I get Arkansas was a train wreck before Chad Morris got there. They were mediocre with Brett Bielema, but he was never going to get them to SEC title contention. Arkansas was a mess at that point because in the Bielema era, before they fired Brett Bielema, they fired their athletic director in Jeff Long. So they had an interim athletic director, then fire Brett Bielema, and then go out and make a brand new coaching hire for their football program that hasn't been relevant since 2010 and 2011, when they went 10-3 and 11-2. That's a horrible decision within the university. The administration let down the fan base and the university at that point. But then Chad Morris comes in, having done nothing at SMU. He got them to respectability in the AAC, the American Athletic, got him to one bowl game. In his final year, that he then left to go take the Arkansas job, got him to one bowl game. To come to the SEC, it was set up for failure. From start to finish, it was going to fail. And Chad Morris was not present there for his team. If you talk to current or past players that were coached by him at Arkansas, they say he was never there. He was constantly going back and forth between Arkansas and Texas, where his family still resided, where his son was playing high school football. He just was not a present coach. So I don't think it was that Chad Morris didn't have enough time to rebuild. I think some coaches do need 3 or 4 years to finally complete their rebuild process, but there's also something to be called effort, something that I don't think Chad Morris put much into. I don't think he put much effort into his players. I don't think he put much player into schemes. I think he was way in over his head. But when Arkansas came calling, it was, I get to coach in the SEC. I get a crap ton of money. And if I fail, I get a crap ton more money because of my buyout. So sure, let's do it. And now he's paired up with his best buddy, Gus Malzahn, as offensive coordinator. So that is my take on that. George Stice, nice to have you here. Super pumped to see you tonight. And DM, thank you so much for the super chat donation. I strongly appreciate that. More than you know. And I want to make sure, DM, that I haven't missed one of your comments here. I don't think I have. I think I've hit all yours. But regardless, thank you so much for that super chat donation. That goes a long ways. We're on a roll with these super chats, guys, and that really does mean a lot. It helps us out more than you know. Hitting that like button helps us out. Comments on all the videos help us out. Super chats help us out. So thank you so much, DM. Always a pleasure discussing with you across the board. So I'm going to say it now. First time I think I've ever said it on a live stream. So go Rutgers and go Bison, baby, with a Z. North Dakota State. DM has got me on both bandwagons. So, all right. Catching back up here real quick as we slowly bring this live stream to a kind of winding down a little bit. Like I said, we were going to run for about an hour to an hour 15. So we still got a little bit, but not too much longer here. Great question here from Cole Converse. Best shot at college football playoff, Florida, Penn State, USC, or Oklahoma State. I think, Cole, that's a more of a two-way answer here. I'd like a fifth option, option E, which is A and B, Florida and Penn State. And I think if I had to really, really choose one, I'd probably choose Penn State because their biggest threat in the Big Ten this year is, of course, Ohio State. And they get to host that game. They can't overlook the road games at Virginia Tech and Michigan, but I think Penn State, out of those four teams you listed, has the best chance of getting to the college football playoff because I think if they somehow upset Ohio State, they're going to be probably undefeated or 11-1 going into, more likely, the Big Ten championship game. And if they win that, they're in. And there's also a chance that some are saying that maybe Penn State loses to Michigan. So Penn State loses to Michigan, but beats Ohio State, or loses to Ohio State, let's say. Scratch that. Let's say they lose to Ohio State, finish the season at 11-1. Ohio State runs the table, undefeated, Big Ten champs, they're in. Could Penn State pull like an Alabama-Georgia from a few years ago, and at 11-1, with their only loss coming in what will probably be a close game to Ohio State, slip into the playoff as that 4 seed, or maybe even a 3 seed? That's something you have to think about, too. There will be the whole controversy. Well, Penn State didn't even play for their conference championship game. How are we going to allow them to do that? That happened to Ohio State a few years ago. They didn't even play for theirs, and they slipped in. So that's the scenario that I think could benefit Penn State more than anything is you go 11-1, the lone loss to Ohio State, you have a shot at the playoff. You go undefeated, you're going to the playoff. But Virginia Tech, Michigan, and Ohio State will all pose problems for the Nittany Lions. So I think that's my team I'm going to choose out of those four. But Florida, a close second there because I think if they beat Georgia, they go to the SEC title. Kicker is, are they undefeated in that game or are they a one-loss team? And the second part to that is, who do they play in the SEC championship? Do they play Alabama? Do they play LSU? And could Florida beat that team? XO Mount Hood. Wait, didn't Central Florida just win a national title a while back? Some would say yes. Some would say no. I think it's the argument that will go on forever. Is it a legitimate national title? Is it a legitimate national title? Because, there's always, we have this many claimed national titles. We have this many unclaimed national titles back from like the early 1900s. Central Florida is going to go down the history book as a unclaimed national title in 2017, 2018. Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting. Ryan Mell, I think the JT Daniels transfer to Georgia, and I didn't answer it earlier. I think it's a fantastic move for the Bulldogs. It caught me by surprise. I was really shocked to see Daniels go to Georgia because there were rumors that he might go to Michigan. There were rumors that he might hang out more out west, maybe go to like San Diego State. Go to a smaller school, but to go to Georgia, I think fits well with his talent because I think he's too talented to maybe be playing at a lower level school. But it's a great move for him because Newman will be gone after this year. And right after Newman's gone, it's the JT Daniels show. And I think he has 3 years of eligibility left, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3. And so just like that, Georgia has now the deepest quarterback room in the country. And there's a chance that Daniels, if he's given immediate eligibility, could be the starter in week 1. Could be the starter this year for Georgia. So I think it's a fantastic move, and I think that sends Georgia's offense to a whole nother level because quarterback play was kind of a concern last year. Fromm was good. He just wasn't necessarily elite. Never really could give them that electricness that they needed on offense. Newman, who's dual threat, and Daniels, who's got a great arm, give them options and give them the opportunity to do just that. So I think it's a fantastic move, Ryan, and I think that gives Georgia the deepest quarterback room in the SEC. And in the next few years, I think that move will be enough to maybe get Georgia a national championship, which, of course, they're contenders for it this year. And another, another super chat donation yet again from Mr. Hood, XO Mount Hood. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that right. But thank you so much again for that contribution. I really, really appreciate it. So thank you. His question, Clemson loses 2 games this year and misses the college football playoff. If you're asking me if that's going to happen, I say no. And I, of course, can't give away my prediction for Clemson, but I'm sure many of you can already figure it out. If Clemson's going to lose a game, it will probably be on the road at Notre Dame. That's arguably their toughest test. That is their toughest test, actually. It's at Notre Dame if they were to lose a game. But, your 2 games here, your 2 games that they could lose, maybe they lose to Notre Dame, which is a non-conference game, which means Clemson could still run the table in the ACC and get to the ACC championship. Then maybe they play a tough team like Virginia Tech or North Carolina, or maybe Miami breaks through. Clemson loses that game, then yes, they're out of the playoff. That'd be 2 losses out of the playoff. But I think if Clemson loses 1 game, just 1, I think they might be out of the playoff. Because their strength of schedule is so weak, guys. The ACC is so weak. And, we always talk about strength of schedule. I look at the Wisconsin team from a few years ago. Was undefeated going into that Big Ten championship against Ohio State, who narrowly defeated the Badgers. But Wisconsin was 4th in the country at that point when they were undefeated. 12-0 probably could have been good enough for some to get up to like 1, 2. A close loss to Ohio State could have maybe kept them in the playoff race. The strength of schedule wasn't there. And I can see that being the case here for Clemson. So there's no room for error, really, for Clemson. Maybe if they lose to Notre Dame, that's a quality loss. It's a good Notre Dame team on the road. Maybe the committee will give them a little bit of slack. But I would be too nervous to even allow that to happen. So I don't think that happens, but I think the college football world, for the most part, would rejoice if it did, because it would finally provide something different. Dabo Swinney's squad would be out of the college football playoff. They've made it 5 straight years, have made the national championship in 4 of those years, and have won 2 national titles. So going through the rest of the chat again, Keto here, when's the next time I see a season like 2007 happening? Keto, it could be this year, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Because we have so many, just because of the circumstances that are happening outside of football, because of the coronavirus, because of so much that's going on right now, so much uncertainty within college football right now, period, that while you still do have your elites and your favorites, Keto, like Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, guys like that, say Clemson were to lose to Notre Dame, say Ohio State were to lose to Penn State on the road, say Florida were to upend Georgia, finally win the East. This is a year, Keto, that maybe it's not as crazy as 2007 in the sense that a 2-loss team were to win the national championship like LSU did that year. But in a sense, Keto, that in 2020 you could have very different teams make the college football playoff and very different teams be in that playoff race up until the final week of the season, up until conference championship weekend. Utah and Baylor were those kind of surprise teams last year that were just both a win away from getting into the playoff. This year, they could still be elite teams like a Penn State, like a Florida, someone like that. But you could have some other surprise teams in there that no one's really expecting, kind of comes out of nowhere, and boom, they are right there in the thick. LSU was expected to be good last year, no doubt. But I don't think anybody saw LSU being that good and then winning the national championship. So there's always one team, 1 or 2 teams that comes out of nowhere, and if they finally take advantage of that opportunity, Keto, it could be a very wild year. I think we're going to see lots of upsets, and with all this uncertainty, people don't like to talk about the importance of spring practice. Spring practice does so much, especially for new coaches and young teams. But it does go a long way for even the most experienced teams. Everybody was denied that this year. Players have had to do a lot of stuff by themselves. So it's going to be interesting to see how what their shape's like when they come back, what the kind of chemistry is like for some of these teams when they come back. It's going to be very, very, very interesting. So it could be as soon as this year, Keto, genuinely. And I'm not just saying that. So continuing to roll down through the chat here, like I said, as we slowly come to a close. Ryan Mell, Illinois could be decent, and Northwestern should bounce back, but these aren't killers by any means, as we're talking about some of the guys in the Big Ten. And the only thing I will say about that is I do agree Northwestern bounces back because they got Peyton Ramsey now, a transfer QB from Indiana, now at Northwestern. He'll provide a huge boost for that Northwestern offense that only averaged a little over 16 points per game. It's one of the worst in the country. The defense is going to be strong. Pat Fitzgerald was averaging about 7 wins a season during his time at Northwestern. Last year was kind of a fluke. Illinois, on the other hand, has a lot of experience coming back. But if you're high on Illinois this year, just go take a look at their schedule. Just go take a look at your schedule and really think about it. Yeah, they've got tons of experience coming back. A lot of guys back from that squad that finally made a bowl game in 2014. But do we really think they can do it again? Take a look at their schedule. Not saying it's not possible, but the non-conference is easy. They should start 3-0. It's after that where it gets very difficult. And I'm not as high on Illinois this year as some other people are. I was at first, and then I kind of dug a little deeper, and I was like, if we're being completely honest, the Fighting Illini should have gone 4-8 last year. They went 6-6 before their bowl loss to Cal, but they should have gone 4-8 because they probably shouldn't have beaten Wisconsin. They probably shouldn't have beaten Michigan State, where they came back down 25. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out for Lovie Smith. We got Josh Weiser here with us. So happy to have you if you're still here. And Outlaw Machiavelli, who is a huge Ohio State fan, as indicated by all the hearts. So this guy loves some Ohio State. I'm just going to take a few more questions here, guys. Emperor of Rome, though, would love to give a shout-out to the St. John's Johnnies football team, a Division III team that just had their first player drafted to the NFL since 1974. Wow, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. So St. John's Johnnies getting a player to the big leagues for the first time since 1974. So, yeah, certainly worthy of a shout-out here. We have to do a little more research on their program, actually, if I'm being completely honest. Vol Benton, thoughts on Tennessee's season? Do I think they can turn it around, or will they still be losing many games? They're not going to lose many games. They're going to lose some games. They won't lose many. I really think that Tennessee is one of those kind of interesting teams, one that could be average and go like 7-5 or 9-3. And to the outsider, that's like, oh, that's just a 2-game difference. That's not a big deal. But in the world of college football, we all know 2 games is a very big deal. 7-5 versus 9-3, there's a drastic difference there. And I think you'll really get a good look at how Tennessee plays early in the season when they're done playing Oklahoma and when they're done playing Florida. And some people think they could pull a win in one of those games. Some people think they can pull off a win in both. One of them's at home at Neyland against Florida. The other one's on the road at Oklahoma. I don't think they pull off both, but I think it's very possible they could pull off one of those upsets. So I think Jeremy Pruitt's really trending them in the right direction. They're going bowling. I can guarantee you that. At least they should, unless they have another terrible start like they did last year. But the talent is there for Tennessee to have a very, very special season. And at the rate that Pruitt is recruiting, they're going to have a special, even bigger and better season next year and the year after that. So I think Tennessee football is slowly on its way back, and they're not just going to hang around for a year or two. I think they're going to hang around consistently. George Stice, do I think Sam Hartman gets the start at Wake Forest? I definitely do. Jamie Newman gone. Hartman had plenty of playing experience, played fairly well in 2018 before, I believe, going down with an injury. And they kind of rotated quarterbacks a few times last year. Dave Clawson did. But now that Newman's gone, I think it's all Hartman. And he's a very capable quarterback to get them back to yet another bowl game. Cole Converse, most wins in 2020. Rutgers, Georgia Tech, Kansas, Colorado, or Vanderbilt. I might lean towards Kansas, probably, Cole. I haven't looked at many of these guys' schedules actually in deep of detail, but I'd lean towards Kansas just because they had 3 one-possession games last year in a 3-9 season. So they very well could have won 6. And I think Les Miles kind of has his guys ready to go, where maybe they don't go bowling, but maybe they go 4-8 or 5-7. And again, don't hold me to that. Nothing's official, but I could see that happening. Nick Lofton from Baylor has been selected by the Royals at 32nd overall in the MLB draft. So, Scott, happy for you, happy for Nick, happy for Baylor. DM here, like I said, we're going to take 3 more, and I'm going to do them very selectively. So, as I'm kind of running through those last years, 3 more questions here. Could Schiano have become the Ohio State head coach if he didn't take that year off prior to taking the Rutgers job? Now, that's a very good question. That's a very, very good question. And one that kind of makes me think a little bit. I'll tell you that. I'll go on the long story with Schiano, DM. I think it was wrong that Schiano had the Tennessee job lined up a few years ago. And the Tennessee fan base revolted against the administration to prevent Schiano from getting hired. I think that was ridiculous. I think it was wrong. And I honestly don't think any fan base should have that much of a say in the decision that the university is going to make. Because I think Schiano would have done a very good job at Tennessee. I genuinely do. So I think he kind of got screwed there. And if I were Schiano, I would have felt hurt that a program and a fan base would have done something like that to me. Because he's a good coach. Did well. He didn't do too hot in the NFL, but he's a good defensive-minded coach. He wouldn't have been coaching with Urban Meyer had he not been. He wouldn't have done as well as he did at Rutgers from about his 5th year to his 10th year had he not been. Because Rutgers back in the day was still a rebuilding process, as it will be now. But to answer your question, do I think he could have taken that job? I think he would have been a strong candidate just because of his prior head coaching experience. I've said it before. I think it's fantastic to get a coach that has NFL coaching experience. I think it's fantastic to get a guy that has experience at the next level. I think it's great, especially at a school like Ohio State, to try to bring in a guy that has prior head coaching experience, period. And I know Ryan Day necessarily didn't have that, except for those few games that he served when Urban was suspended. But, obviously it's paid off for him. But I think he would have been a very strong candidate at DM, but I don't think Ohio State would have taken him. I think they would have gone for a guy maybe a little younger. I think they would have promoted from within. I think if Schiano was still on the staff when Urban decided to step down, it would have been a 2-man race between Ryan Day and Greg Schiano. But I think, as some have indicated, especially Ohio State faithful, I think Urban was kind of setting that up for Ryan Day. And I think a lot of it, DM, too, would have come down to who does Urban recommend. Urban is one of the greatest football coaches of all time. So you know that he was going to recommend someone to the athletic director. Here's who I think you should hire. Urban knows his staff better than anybody else. Those players know his coaches better than anybody else. So I think it would have been a matter of what does Urban say, what do the players say, and I think they probably still would have gone with Ryan Day. But also you can't help but wonder if Schiano was still on the staff, would he have served as interim head coach during that 3 or 4 game stretch? It's another hypothetical. So he would have been a strong candidate, but I think sooner or later, DM, he's got the Rutgers job now, but I think he would have left Ohio State had he not gotten it. I think he would have gone to take another job. More than likely Rutgers again. He tried to do Tennessee, and they screwed him over big time. So fantastic question. It's always fun to kind of think on those hypotheticals. Lamar Stevens, real quick. I'm going to get to yours as our final question because it certainly deserves to be. But once again, thank you so much for the super chat, loading us up with the super chats tonight, Lamar. I really, really, really appreciate that. So thank you so much. And you're going to be our final question of the night after I touch on Nathan Bryant, who will have the best rebuilding season this year. And it's funny you asked that, Nathan, because there was a post out just the other day of 5 teams set to rise and 5 teams set to fall in 2020. And that might be a video that we put out here very soon. But the 5 teams they have rising, kind of rebuilding a little bit and improving a lot from last year, they were Miami, TCU, Northwestern, Stanford, and Arkansas. Those were the 5 teams that 247 Sports listed as risers in 2020. And Nathan, I think I'm just going to choose out of those 5 who I think has the best rebuilding year. I think Northwestern can get back to a bowl game, but I think if you're looking for a guy to really contend, it's TCU. I think TCU and Gary Patterson's a squad that the Big 12 has to watch out for. So I'm kind of a little high on TCU this year. I like this Northwestern team to probably get back to bowl eligibility. Stanford has some questions for sure. Arkansas, of course, has questions. Miami, if their offensive line bulks up, could be an 8 or 9 win team this year as well. So I think all those teams have a chance to be big on the rebuilds. But rebuild such a loose term, I think, for a lot of people. But out of those 5, Nathan, I'm going to give you that answer. I picked TCU. And out of those 5, TCU has the best coach as well. And to wrap it up, as Too Quick Basketball says, yes, make that a video. So consider it done. Here in a few days, we'll be touching on those 5 teams that are set to rise and 5 teams set to fall. We'll certainly touch on that, sir. So thank you for that. Got a little support. But Lamar Stevens, can LSU produce half of what it produced at quarterback? Half of 6,000 yards, 65 touchdowns, and maybe a 65% completion percentage. Yes. Yes. Here's why. Miles Brennan did a great job, guys. Miles Brennan has the benefit of learning under Joe Burrow, had the benefit of learning under Joe Brady before both of them left. People are very high on him. And I don't think people just say that. I don't think players and coaches just come out like, oh, yeah, we're high on this quarterback. We feel really good about it. I know sometimes it's to kind of play off a question, but I feel very confident in that. I think when you're learning from a great system and a great quarterback, that it wears off a lot on you. And he has a lot of great wide receivers. When you've got a receiver like that, leaving Terrence Marshall and Jamar Chase both returning to your squad, that is the key. Jamar Chase, Terrence Marshall, those are keys right there that are going to strongly benefit to where when you've got those type of wide receivers and you're running that Ed Ogeron type offense, don't expect LSU to go back to a Les Miles type of offense where they kind of pass, but they mostly rely on run. We're going to go, go, go. And that's been Ed Ogeron's kind of bread and butter since he got there. So, yeah, half of 6,000 yards is 3,000. That's about average for a solid quarterback. Absolutely, Brennan can do that. Let's say half of 66, that's 33 touchdowns. Could be a little high, depending on how well Brennan really pans out. But I could easily see 25, 26, and then 65% completion percentage. Easily. I'd say between 62 to 65 for Miles Brennan is realistic. So, Lamar, first off, again, thank you for the super chat donation. But yes, as a matter of a fact, they can get at least half of that production. He's no Joe Burrow, but you're not going to see as significant of a drop-off offensively as people think LSU will have. Certainly not going to be the case. So, as Ryan Mell and Too Quick Basketball said, they want to hear about the risers and fallers. We'll be taking those 5 teams from each side, and we'll be having a video on that out pretty soon. And, guys, that's how we'll conclude tonight on this Gridiron Expert live stream, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Central Time, per usual. We want to thank you all so much for joining us. Few last closing remarks. First off, make sure to go check out the Gridiron Expert on Instagram, guys. If you are on social media at all, we hope that you're following us on Twitter, but also Instagram. Our page there has really taken off. We are posting there constantly, consistently, working with a bunch of other college football pages as well, not only to help them, but to help us. So go check that out. One of those, of course, is College Football Obsession, who commented quite a bit on our stream tonight. Has some great content there. So check us out on Instagram. Check us out on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook even, believe it or not. We have a Gridiron Expert Facebook. So go like that page over there. We've got a couple filler videos coming out to you over the next few days. We will not have a live stream next Wednesday. Starting next Wednesday, we'll probably be taking about a week off. So we'll have a couple filler videos up until next Wednesday. We're going to take a slight week off because on the 25th, 2 weeks from tomorrow, we got predictions. And we've got predictions all summer long, all the way up until the start of the season on week 0. So starting next Wednesday, we take a week off. We've got a few filler videos. We wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. But for the night, thank you all so much for your support. It's another fantastic live stream. Not too many callers, but once again, great analysis and comments in the chat. Two quick basketball. Do I think game day has a chance to come to Ames this year? Yes, for the Oklahoma game. That is certainly one where they could land the big-time ESPN crew. So certainly that. But guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. DM, Scott Bankale, Ryan Mel, College Football Obsession, Emperor of Rome, George Stice, John Hopkins, Hunter 5657, Cyclone Mitch, all of you guys that were joining us, all 15, and earlier it was I think 25. Thank you so much for the comments, the support, this discussion, some of the best in the entire nation. You guys have a great and safe rest of the night, and we will see you very soon right back here on the Gridiron Expert.